In the Sahara trade, gold was not always the thing that decided value. Sometimes the heavier truth was white, brittle, and cut from the desert. This was not seasoning first in heat work, animal care, and food storage. Salt entered the economy through need. The need waited south of the desert. The major supplies lay far to the north, inside landscapes that punished movement. Salt is ordinary where it is near. Move it far enough from the source and need begins to price it like power. Somewhere beyond the buyer's world, men cut white blocks from places where almost nothing else could be produced. Later, in Timbuktu, salt would meet grain, cattle, manuscripts, taxes, brokers, and the guarded movement of gold. Salt traveled in public, stacked high on animals. Gold moved in smaller shadows, sealed, hidden, and watched. The question is not why gold was precious. It is how the Sahara made salt powerful enough to command it. Before we start, subscribe to Built the World and join us. Then leave a comment and tell me what other hidden part of our world should we look into next. All right, let's go. Before salt became cargo, it was a quiet demand inside the body. Heat pulled it out through sweat. Work made the loss visible. Farmers, herders, porters, and animals needed it before merchants named a price. The economy began with fatigue, thirst, and muscle. South of the Sahara, the land was not empty, but it was demanding. Heat, seasonal hunger, and stored grain made minerals matter. Salt helped keep food usable when distance. Heat and time worked against the household. Preservation turned a mineral into insurance. A handful could not be wasted. Salt was measured, hidden, divided, and saved because replacing it was never simple. Livestock made the need larger. Herds were walking wealth, and animals also needed minerals to keep moving, breeding, and carrying loads. Need created rules. Families rationed it, herders watched it, traders remembered who had some and who had none. Salt's first power came from what happened when it was missing. The market did not invent the need, it followed it. The problem was location. The demand waited in the south. The strongest supplies lay far north beyond the open desert. Between need and supply stood gravel plains, dunes, dry basins, and horizons without mercy. Before trade began, geography had already set the terms. Before anyone crossed, decisions gathered around the route: who would lead, how much water to risk, and whose judgment could be trusted. Water would fix the rhythm. Any salt moved south would depend on wells dividing the desert into survivable intervals. A crossing would require animals, handlers, guards, water, food, repairs, and time. The price was forming before the first load was tied. The salt had not moved, but distance was already working on it. Every mile ahead meant water, fatigue, protection, and delay. In the south, buyers waited on events beyond their horizon. A household shortage could begin with a decision made far north. To understand the price, the story must move before the cargo does, north, to the place where the white blocks first appear. Far north of the buyers, Taghaza existed for one reason. Beneath the desert surface lay salt hard enough to build a trade on. The place offered little comfort. Food, timber, cloth, and sometimes even patience had to be brought in from somewhere else. Workers cut into the salt with iron tools, separating the ground into blocks that could later leave the desert on camelback. A slab began as impact, leverage, and dust. Hands loosened it, trimmed it, dragged it, and stacked it for the road. The mine consumed what it could not produce. Grain arrived, water was guarded, and salt waited in heavier stacks than life returned. Taghaza was not rich in the way cities were rich. Its wealth sat in stacks, waiting for a journey not yet begun. A miner did not need to see Mali to serve its markets. Every cut in the salt ground answered demand beyond the horizon. The trade began in a place that could barely support itself. That hardship entered the salt before the first camel rose. Raw salt had to be made legible to logistics. Uneven crust became cut faces, edges, corners, and stackable weight. A slab too large could break an animal. A slab too small lost authority. The market began and the cut tools wore down against the deposit. Salt dust entered eyes, wounds, rope fibers, and every fold of clothing. The work repeated until the landscape looked organized. Cut lines spread across the ground like an account book without ink. Not every piece could travel the same way. Broken salt was separated. Solid slabs were saved for long-distance loads. The best slabs waited near the animals. Their shape had to fit wood, rope, hide, balance, and days of walking. Distance demanded a shape before salt could become wealth. It had to become something a camel could carry. Loading began before sunrise. The prepared slabs left the ground and became a live burden on animals, ropes, and men. Each side of the saddle had to answer the other. A bad balance would reveal itself miles later, when repair was harder. A loose rope could ruin a load. A cracked slab could become fragments before the first well. Nothing was casual. Each load belonged to someone. Behind the ropes were owners, debts, handlers, agreements, and the expectation of return. Salt was the cargo, but water, grain, tools, and guards made the cargo possible. Profit rode inside a larger burden. Then the separate loads became one body. The caravan formed by order, not beauty. Leaders, animals, guards, and rear watchers. When the first animals rose, Taghaza began to empty outward. The mine's value walked away on padded feet. The salt was no longer a stack beside the mine. It was exposed value, moving slowly into everything that could destroy it. A route was not a line on a map. It was remembered wells, stars, wind patterns, and the judgment of guides. The next well ruled the day before anyone reached it. Speed, rest, and rationing all bent toward that hole in the ground. Water competed with salt for space. Carry too little water, and profit became danger. Carry too much, and fewer slabs moved south. Guides carried more than directions. They knew where dunes shifted, where raiders watched, and which wells might fail. The road bent human time. Men walked in cool hours, rested under brutal light, then rose again when the sand released heat. Animals knelt when water was counted. Men drank by command, not thirst. The caravan survived by rhythm before speed. A missed interval could undo the whole venture. Salt had value only if the bodies around it reached the next water alive. Before ruler, buyer, or broker, the next well governed the salt. Water decided how much value could keep moving. Days did not pass cleanly. Salt chipped, animals limped, men argued over water, and the desert took payment before the market did. A broken saddle did not pause the economy, it threatened it. The load could not wait for comfort or spare parts. The desert loosened everything. Ropes stretched, saddles cracked, skins leaked, and men spent rest hours fixing tomorrow's failure. At oases, caravans repaired more than equipment. They exchanged warnings, hired help, checked rumors, and measured the road ahead. Movement required permission as much as endurance. Passage could mean gifts, tolls, escorts, or negotiations with those who held the route. The cargo moved slowly and announced itself. Bells, dust, and numbers could attract partners, guides, rivals, or attackers. Cargo invited danger, guards, alliances, and route choices became part of the transaction long before a buyer appeared. The slab was accumulating cost while still far from buyers. Fatigue, repair, fear, and delay were already inside the cargo. Inventory did not end at the mine. At every halt, loads were touched, counted, tightened, and judged for damage. A crack mattered before anyone bargained. Lost corners became future arguments, and the road wrote evidence into the slab. News moved through camps before goods reached markets. A bad well, a watched pass, or a missing guide could change confidence overnight. To know a safe path was to hold leverage. Information could save water, shorten delay, and protect the load. By now, the salt carried more than mineral weight. Wells, guards, repairs, delay, and passage costs had entered every block. At the southern edge, smoke appeared ahead. Herders saw the loads before the market did, and animals pulled toward the mineral dust. The route was no longer behind the salt. Before a buyer touched it, the road had become part of what it was worth. The desert gave way to scrub and settlement. Smoke rose from compounds. Animals gathered, and the caravan became visible to demand. People came out before the loads stopped moving. Buyers watched the animals first, reading distance in their ribs and knees. Arrival did not end negotiation. Buyers checked dryness, weight, breakage, and the honesty of every claimed load. A crack mattered. Lost corners became lost value, and the road left evidence that neither side could fully ignore. Large slabs began to divide. Some moved onward intact, Others became smaller pieces for households, herds, and nearby markets. Merchants stored part of the arrival. Salt could wait in shade, but debt, hunger, and animal need kept pressure moving. Beyond these first exchanges waited larger markets near the Niger. There, salt would meet gold, grain, books, taxes, and power. Before Timbuktu touched it, salt had already passed through mine, rope, well guard, damage, argument, and storage. After the crossing, the salt moved toward Timbuktu near the Niger world. It was not the end of the road, it was a hinge. From the north came salt and desert news. From the Niger came grain, livestock, cloth, manuscripts, and routes deeper south. The city had to absorb weight. Camels knelt in yards. Men lowered slabs. Storage rooms swallowed the desert piece by piece. Arrival turned into procedure. Loads were counted. Shade was claimed. Brokers appeared, and the caravan became inventory. Salt did not enter an empty market. It entered a living economy of millet, cattle hides, cloth, and river movement. Beside the mineral loads moved another cargo. Paper, ink, legal memory, and scholarship carried through the same streets. Timbuktu concentrated what the road scattered. Distance, labor, risk, and need gathered into prices people could argue over. Here, the desert became negotiable. The city did not erase distance, it gave distance a market floor. Inside the city, salt changed hands before it changed owners. Porters moved it from camel packs into rooms built for waiting. Shade became strategy. Stored salt could wait for the right buyer, the hungry season, or the next caravan's delay. Brokers tested the slab like evidence. Dryness, weight, color, breakage, and clean edges all became arguments. The desert left marks, and each mark could lower a claim. Merchants priced not only salt, but the journey's damage. A whole slab belonged to merchants. Pieces belonged to households, herders, cooks, and travelers who could not buy the desert in one block. From the market, salt disappeared into kitchens, animal yards, medicine pouches, and grain stores. Trade ended as habit. Once salt entered the city, rulers and officials could see it. Visibility made it taxable, countable, and politically useful. The market did not merely sell survival. It graded it, divided it, stored it, taxed it, and sent it onward. Only now does gold enter the frame, not as the beginning of the story, but as the counterflow moving north. Gold came through southern networks, guarded by distance and intermediaries. Its path was valuable because not everyone could reach its source. Trust had to be built in layers. Brokers handled words, witnesses handled memory, and scales handled what promises could not. Gold was small enough to hide and dangerous enough to expose. Its movement depended on secrecy as much as roads. North of the desert, gold fed coinage, courts, merchants, and Mediterranean ambition. The same routes that brought salt south pulled gold away. Salt moved toward heat, herds, kitchens, and grain. Gold moved toward mints, rulers, ports, and distant buyers. The exchange worked because each side lacked what the other could move. Timbuktu gave those shortages a meeting place. Where trust was thin, trade needed distance. Language, danger, secrecy, and gold source protection could all stand between buyers and sellers. The location of supply could be worth guarding. Reveal too much, and a profitable chain might break around you. Some accounts describe a ritual of separation. One group laid out goods, withdrew, and waited for the other to answer with value. If the offer pleased them, the goods moved. If not, they waited, added more, or walked away without touching hands. The scene is powerful, but it must be held carefully. Silent trade appears in traditions and reports, not as every market's routine. Whether rare, ritualized, or exaggerated, the story exposes a real pressure. Exchange needed ways to protect access. In the gold-salt world, wealth did not only belong to the owner of goods, it belonged to those who controlled contact. As exchange thickened, more people lived from the movement around salt. Porters, brokers, guards, scribes, witnesses, and landlords. A market that handled distant goods needed memory. Agreements had to outlive the handshake, the caravan, and the season. Timbuktu's reputation did not rest on salt alone, yet commerce helped feed the city where scholars, books, and law gathered. Manuscripts moved through the city with their own care. Ink, leather, paper, and teaching shared streets with animals and mineral weight. Rulers watched the routes because trade turned geography into revenue. Protect the path, and the city's weight increased. More caravans required more order. More order attracted more caravans. The city's importance began feeding on repetition. Caravans came because markets waited. Markets grew because caravans returned. Salt helped turn arrival into expectation. By now, the salt slab had entered more than trade. It supported rooms, records, guards, scholars, taxes, and the pull of a city. South of the market city, gold entered the system quietly. It arrived as dust, wrapped, guarded, and carried through trusted hands. Few traders needed to know where the metal began. Intermediaries carried gold outward while protecting the routes that made them necessary. Salt needed animals and open space. Gold needed a pouch, a trusted carrier, and enough silence to pass unnoticed. Its danger came from size. Gold was easy to hide, easy to steal, and easy to deny once trust failed. The metal mattered, but so did the silence around it. Knowledge of sources, trails, and reliable brokers became protected property. A broker stood between strangers and made distance useful. He could translate risk into terms, witnesses, and measured trust. Salt drew power from delivered bulk. Gold drew power from guarded access. The same network carried two different kinds of leverage. Gold did not need to fill the road. It only needed enough guarded movement to make everyone watch the road differently. Mali's strength came from position. It sat between northern caravans, Niger routes, southern gold, and the markets that needed them together. The empire did not need every mine or every gold field. It needed the crossings, the markets, and the authority to hold them. Once goods passed through watched places, movement could be counted. Counting became fees, tribute, protection, and royal attention. Protection was never neutral. Guards made the road safer, but they also reminded merchants who allowed the road to function. Behind the market noise stood procedure. Witnesses remembered claims. Officials marked loads. Brokers converted suspicion into tradable agreement. A ruler who shaped movement, shaped value. Delay, permission, safety, and access could all change what goods were worth. The state grew heavier with every repeated crossing. Its income depended on goods that had to keep moving. Mali profited from the middle. It did not have to become the mine. It had to govern the passage between needs. When gold turned north, it traveled differently. Small packets were sealed, hidden in larger loads, and assigned to trusted carriers. At the city's edge, directions split. Salt remained tied to southern need. Gold faced the desert and the northern markets beyond. In the north, gold carried another meaning. It fed mints, merchants, rulers, and the accounts of cities tied to wider seas. The pull came from cities that could turn dust into payment status and long-distance settlement of debts. At northern caravan towns, desert cargo changed identity again. Gold left the route and entered workshops, treasuries, and merchant accounts. From there, the metal could move again by caravan, ship, contract, or coin. The Sahara had filtered it into a larger world. The desert did not stop wealth from moving. It narrowed the path, raised the cost, and made every successful crossing matter. Salt filled courtyards and strained pack frames. Gold disappeared into cloth and forced men to worry about hands, doors, and oaths. A salt load punished the animal before it tempted the thief. A gold load could be lighter than food and heavier than trust. Salt was difficult to steal quietly. Its protection meant guarding animals, roots, wells, and the slow visibility of bulk. Gold created a quieter fear. A missing pouch could vanish into a sleeve, a saddle seam, or a false oath. Salt accounting was public and physical. Men counted slabs, paired loads, chipped corners, and camels able to stand. Gold accounting was delicate. Dust required steady hands, honest scales, quiet rooms, and people willing to remember what they saw. The dull cargo created the bigger scene. The precious cargo created the smaller circle. Each produced its own kind of fear. Salt and gold shared roads, guards, brokers, and cities, but they did not produce the same risks or the same power. Repetition changed the trade again. Expected caravans let merchants plan storage, credit, purchases, and obligations before goods arrived. A slab in storage was not asleep. It could support a promise, secure a debt, or wait for a stronger price. No single man could control the whole road. Risks spread through partners, families, brokers, guards, and written memory. Merchant houses became anchors. They held goods, arranged carriers, remembered debts, and turned desert uncertainty into managed exposure. A delayed caravan was not only late, it unsettled debts, emptied stores, raised prices, and made every rumor sharper. Raid, drought, failed wells, or political dispute could move through the system faster than the camels themselves. By then, the trade was larger than any single market. Mines, wells, gates, storehouses, courts, and ports had become connected pressure points. Salt moved south, gold moved north. Power gathered in the middle. A failure anywhere could change value everywhere. Eventually, the extraordinary became scheduled. Markets listened for caravan bells the way farmers watched the sky. Herders waited for mineral pieces. Households waited for smaller measures. Merchants waited for slabs large enough to store and resell. Before the caravan entered, storage rooms were cleared, accounts opened, porters hired, and prices whispered in shaded corners. Agreements could begin before the dust appeared. Expected salt made promises possible, and promises made the next crossing heavier. Across the system, work synchronized. Mines cut, wells waited, markets prepared, and officials watched the rhythm become ordinary. Once people trusted the crossing to repeat, the crossing stopped being an adventure. It became something life leaned on. Then imagine the bells not coming. A late caravan changed the air before it changed the ledgers. Storehouses grew quiet. Herders bargained harder. Officials asked questions. Buyers began counting what they had left at home. People rationed smaller pieces. Merchants closed doors earlier. A mineral that had seemed ordinary became guarded again, without fresh supply. Every remaining slab carried new arguments. Price rose through voices before it moved through accounts. The cause might be a failed well, a raid, a sandstorm, or a dispute at a crossing. The effect arrived first as absence. A problem on the route became a problem in the city. Debt, trust, kitchens, herds, and official revenue tightened together. The system was fragile because it worked. Every successful link had created another place where failure could travel. Gold draws the eye easily. It glows under lamplight, fits the scale, and makes rulers and merchants lean closer. Gold left records, coins, rumors, and reputations. It traveled into stories because power liked to see itself reflected there. But salt returned to places gold never entered. Cooking fires, animal yards, grain stores, travel bags, and tired bodies. Its force was not brilliance. It was repetition, meal after meal, herd after herd, journey after journey. People could admire gold from a distance. Salt demanded contact. It had to be touched, carried, broken, swallowed, and shared. Gold made the trade famous. Salt made the trade unavoidable. That is the difference between treasure and infrastructure. Every slab had once begun as a cut in hostile ground. By the end, that cut connected mine, road, city, and body. The mineral became a block. The block became a load. The load became a promise that the crossing would happen again. Rope marked it, wind scratched it, wells delayed it, guards protected it. The route left itself on the surface. In the market, buyers saw salt, merchants saw timing, damage, scarcity, and the cost of keeping movement alive. Then the slab lost its monumental shape. It became fragments, measures, pouches, animal licks, and food that could last longer. After mines, camels, wells, guards, officials, and scales, the system ended in the smallest act, someone taking salt into the body. Gold could measure wealth. Salt measured something harsher, the cost of staying alive where the body, the herd, and the storehouse needed it. The Sahara did not simply trade salt for gold. It turned distance, thirst, labor, and need into a price the world could not ignore.